Zach, conference realignment is massive in the news right now, especially down here in the South, because that seems to be where everybody's moving around. But the Big Ten's got some new additions this year, and then there are more additions rumored soon. What are Ohio State fans' general outlook on conference realignment? What are their thoughts on teams coming, going, whatever?
I mean, I think everyone sees this crash course to a 2-conference league. Everyone sees it coming. And I mean, not only did you see it when the SEC grabbed Oklahoma, Texas, then the Big Ten made their move, and those 2 conferences were making moves like crazy. And then a couple of months ago, they formed a coalition committee where like a couple of admins from the SEC and a couple of admins from the Big Ten are going to have this committee. And you're like, well, what's that for? Like, why are they trying to partner? Like, you see it coming.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, Ohio State fans feel bad for Florida State and, in a way, Clemson and Miami, but really Florida State, because what happened last year was atrocious. And I blame the conference for that. And I really blame every conference that is not even attempting to make moves. I guess the ACC did when they grabbed Stanford. What a great move, right? As all this stuff's shaking out, everyone saw what's going to happen in the Pac-12, where you just sit there like, no, we're good. We're the Pac-12. All of a sudden you're the Pac-2. It's like, no, you're not. And I feel like that's what the ACC is doing. The Big 12, the ACC and Big 12 are trying, but there's no one else to grab. So It's like, what do you do? So I think we all see it coming. I know Big 10 fans would love to get Florida State and either Miami or Clemson in the Big 10. I think it would be fitting. But I could also see either of those 3 in the SEC. So I don't think it really matters. But I know that it's like you're trying to surround your enemies, right? Like Ohio State went out west. They even grabbed Rutgers a couple years back to kind of grab a Northeast chunk. I think if they can grab some Southern influence, the other one I'd love to see is Georgia Tech, and not because they're great at football, but the Big Ten is so academic heavy. And I know it hasn't happened, but I feel like the right coach in Atlanta, given a lot of time
and resources,
if it wasn't so screwed up that from the admin down, how is that not a hot place? So personally, I'd love to see Florida State and Georgia Tech come in. And if you want to throw in Miami, and I know that's a good academic school too, that's fine with me. And I think that's where we're heading. It's going to be the teams like that are going to get to pick, or at least like negotiate out the better fit. And then teams like, Boston College are going to be sitting there like UConn, like, okay, I don't have a home.
Yeah. What I wonder, so it feels like Miami finally, and maybe we need to see one or 2 more years of it. And maybe a little bit of a turnaround, but it feels like Miami is finally investing in football the right way with Cristobal, and NIL, like going pretty all in with a lot of stuff. And Florida State and Clemson certainly have that investment. I would hope that if Georgia Tech was able to get into one of the big 2, that they would start to have some of that investment too. They've had some good teams throughout the years and some good players, but kind of go all in. Because I agree, like you could put them in the Big 10, but if they're not if they're just going to treat it like, I don't know, like Vandy treats the SEC, then who cares, right? Like they're just another, you just got to invest, right? Like we're going to give you this many millions of dollars to play with, like put it into football, please try.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that I think the conference needs to handle. And I've said that, obviously started my show and I was born and raised in Ohio, but I was in the SEC for 6 years. So I certainly understand the landscape better than some buck nut fan that's just up here thinks Ohio State's the best. I've said it forever. I mean, you look at the payouts that the Big Ten is giving each member school, and then you look at their recruiting budget. And I think there should be a mandatory conference rule that X% of your budget needs to be spent on recruiting. Yeah. Because what are you doing with all the money then? You're not investing it and putting a better product on the field and in turn elevating our conference. I think that should be a mandatory thing.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think I honestly, I wish the ACC would have that. Like Florida State's doing it with the same media payout that Boston College and Syracuse get. Now, Florida State gets more from, licensing and boosters and all those things, right? But they're still getting the same media payout, and we're just using ours, right? Like we're just actually investing it back into the program, where some of these other dead weights just aren't even close. And you're just like,
they have no way to survive. If they really reinvested all that money back into the football program, you'd look at 10 sports and be like, well, we got to cut them.
Yeah, they'd all be gone. So
yeah.
The white whale that everybody talks about is Notre Dame. do
Yeah.
Ohio State fans want? I asked a Michigan guy. I had a Michigan guy on and asked him, and he just said his answer was, well, it just feels natural to get them for the rivalry. Would Ohio State fans want Notre Dame in the Big Ten?
Oh, for sure. For sure, because Notre Dame could be that other, I don't want to call them a power, because we all know what Notre Dame is. They're good for 10-2. They ain't beating Georgia, or they ain't beating, like, they're going to play somebody. You're like, okay, that was fun, guys. Thanks for playing. But still, they elevate the conference. And
Sure.
who knows with Marcus Freeman? I mean, he could take them to a new level in recruiting. And I mean, Brian Kelly did a really good job, just never got him over the hump. And I think the landscape of college football, whether it was a playoff committee or whoever it was, they've really forced that hand. Like, no, there's no way in the world Notre Dame can get a bye in the playoffs. And it's a beautiful thing. It's like, no, screw you. Join a conference. Like, everyone else is in a conference. They have to play an extra game. So your extra game is a play-in game, which I don't think hurts them. Like you said, if they're the 5 seed, if they're undefeated, they get the 5 seed. They're playing Liberty. Like, I'd rather play Liberty than Oregon in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a ton of pressure on them to make the move, but I think it's something that's inevitable. And I think Ohio State fans, pretty much everyone in the Big Ten, would welcome it.
Yeah. It feels to me like we will get 10 years from now, and man, I don't know if both conferences would truly merge or not, but we would have a Big 2 Super League at that point. Maybe grab some of the Big 12 teams, but I don't know that maybe for Olympic sports, maybe for non-rev sports, but I don't know that the SEC and Big 10 will exist in 10, 15 years for football. I'm not predicting it won't, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was just, NFL Junior or, the D League or whatever.
No,
call it what you want, but I think it's going that way.
Yeah, I think it's going that way. And what they're going to do is, I would imagine, they're going to revert back to old for Olympic sports, because it's stupid. Like, why is the rowing team from Stanford flying to Boston? Like,
Right.
What are we doing? Let them just go play Cal. Like, what's the point? Football, I get it. So I think that's what's the end all be all is going to be 2 super conferences mimicking, like you said, the AFC, NFC, and then all those other schools can kind of revert back to kind of how basketball does, right? Like the Big Sky or the Big East that doesn't exist but does exist.
Regionally.
Yeah, just conferences that make sense for everything other than football and maybe basketball, but they're kind of in their own world too.
Yeah. Zach, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work?
So best place is menacesports.com. We just launched a new website, has message boards. All of our content goes on there. We go live on there every day at noon. Also on YouTube and all social media at just Menace2 Sports with the number 2.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you for joining me, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's fun.
Thanks, bud. We have chatted a ton of conference realignment. If you've missed any of that, you can click a video on the screen right now that YouTube thinks you should watch.